Hey, good evening and welcome to our little intimate setting. And we're going to do some readings tonight for several weeks just to provide a little different something to do on Wednesday evening. Something that hopefully will give you some inspiration and some hope. As a minister, I do a lot of reading and wish I got a lot of time to read, a little bit more now. And I'm interested to know if you're a reader. What are you reading? Send me an email. Let me know what you're reading. I'm always looking for something new and good to read. We're going to read tonight from Max Lucado's When God Whispers Your Name. Max Lucado is one of my favorite theologians. I am proud to say I'm a progressive Christian, but Max Lucado is very much a middle-of-the-road kind of guy. He writes where you can easily read it, easily understood, and he writes a lot with humor too, but it's very comforting. And this particular book is one that I've referenced many times in my journey into ordination. I reference this book quite often in several papers that I have written. Tonight I'd like to read the introduction to the book, a little intro that comes, and then the first short story that comes with it. The sheep listen to the voice of the shepherd. He calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them. That comes from John's Gospel, the 10th chapter and the 3rd verse. When I see a flock of sheep, I see exactly that, a flock, a rabble of wool, a herd of hooves. I don't see a sheep, I see sheep, all alike, none different. That's what I see. But not so with the shepherd. To him, every sheep is different. Every face is special. Every face has a story, and every sheep has a name. The one with sad eyes, oh, that's Droopy. And the fellow with one ear up and the other down, I call him Oscar. And the small one with the black patch on his leg, he's an orphan with no brothers. I call him Joseph. The shepherd knows the sheep. He calls them by name. When we see a crowd, we see exactly that, a crowd. Filling a stadium or flooding a mall. When we see a crowd, we see people. Not persons, but people. A herd of humans. A flock of faces. That's what we see. But not so with the shepherd. To him, every face is different. Every face is a story. Every face is a child. Every child has a name. The one with the sad eyes, that's Sally. The old fellow with one eyebrow up and the other down, Harry's his name. And the young one with the limp, he's an orphan with no brothers. I call him Joey. The shepherd knows the sheep. He knows each one by name. The shepherd knows you. He knows your name, and he will never forget it. I have written your name on my hand. Isaiah 49:16. Quite a thought, isn't it? Your name on God's hand. Your name on God's lips. Maybe you've seen your name in some special places. On an award or diploma or walnut door. Or maybe you've heard your name from some important people. A coach, a celebrity, a teacher. But to think that your name is on God's hand and on God's lips. My, could it be? Or perhaps you've never seen your name honored, and you can't remember when you heard it spoken with kindness. If so, it may be more difficult for you to believe that God knows your name. But God does. Written on God's hand, spoken by God's mouth, whispered by God's lips. Your name, and not only the name you now have, but the name God has in store for you. A new name God will give you. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll I'll tell you about your new name in the last chapter. This is just the introduction. And so, may I introduce you to this book. It's a book of hope, a book whose sole aim is to encourage. For the last year, I have harvested thoughts from a landscape of fields. And through their size and flavors are varied, their purpose is singular, to provide you, the reader, with a word of hope. I thought you could use it. You've been on my mind as I've been writing. I've thought of you often. I honestly have. Over the years, I've gotten to know some of you folks well. I've read your letters, shaken your hands, and watched your eyes. I think I know you. You're busy. Time passes before your tasks are finished. And if you get a chance to read, it's a slim chance indeed. You're anxious. Bad news outpaces the good. Problems outnumber solutions. You're concerned. What future do your children have on this earth? What future do you have? You're cautious. You don't trust as easily as you once did. Politicians have lied. The system has failed. And so I wrote. I thought about you, all of you. You aren't malicious. You aren't evil. You aren't hard-headed occasionally, but not hard-hearted. You really want to do what is right. But sometimes life turns south. Occasionally, we need a reminder. Not a sermon, a reminder. A reminder that God knows your name. Many chapters auditioned for this book, but not all were selected. After all, not just any chapter would do. Brevity was required, for you were busy. Hope was needed, for you're anxious. Loyalty to Scripture was a mandate, for you're cautious. I sought to give you a repertoire of chapters that recite well the lyrics of grace and sing well the melody of joy. For you are the guests of the maestro, and he is preparing a concert you'll never forget. Part 1 begins the Song of the Minstrel. My wife loves antiques. I don't. I find them a bit old. But because I love my wife, I occasionally find myself guiding 3 children to an antique store while Denland shops. Such is the price of love. The secret to survival in a shop of relics is to find a chair and an old book and settle down for the long haul. That's what I did yesterday. After cautioning the kids to look with their eyes and not with their hands, I sat down in an overstuffed rocker with some Life magazines from the 50s. That's when I heard the music. Piano music. Beautiful music. Vintage Rodgers and Hammerstein. The hills were alive with the sound of someone's skill at a keyboard. I turned to see who was playing, but couldn't see anyone. I stood and walked closer. A small group of listeners had gathered at the old upright piano. Between the furniture, I could see the small back of the pianist. Why, it's only a child. With a few more steps, I could see her hair, short, blonde, and cute, like, well, my heart, it's Andrea. Our 7-year-old was at the piano, her hands racing up and down the keyboard. I was stunned. What a gift of heaven is this that she can play in such a way. Must be a time-release gene she got from my side of the family. But as I drew closer, I saw the real reason. Andrea was playing a player piano. She wasn't making the music, she was following it. She wasn't commanding the keyboard, she was trying to keep up with it. Though it appeared she was playing a song, in reality she was only trying to keep up with one already written. When a key would dip, her hands would dash. Oh, but if I could have seen her little face, delighted with laughter, eyes dancing as would her feet, had she been able to stand and play at the same time. I could see why she was so happy. She sat down to attempt chopsticks, but instead played the sound of music. What's more, she couldn't fail. One greater than she was dictating the sound. Andrea was free to play as much as she wanted, knowing the music would never suffer. It's no wonder she rejoiced. She had every reason to, and so do we. Hasn't God promised the same to us? We sit at the keyboard, willing to play the only song we know, only to discover a new song, a sublime song. And nobody is more surprised than we are when our meager efforts are converted into melodious moments. But you have one, you know, a song all your own. Each of us does. The only question is, will you play it? By the way, as I watched Andrea play that day in the antique store, I observed a couple of things. I noticed the piano got all the credit. The gathered crowd appreciated Andrea's efforts. They knew the real source of the music. When God works, the same is true. We may applaud the disciple, but no one knows better than the disciple who really deserves the praise. But that doesn't keep the disciple from sitting at the bench. It sure didn't keep Andrea from sitting at the piano. Why? Because she knew she couldn't fail. Even though she didn't understand how it worked, she knew it did. So she sat at the keyboard and had the time of her life. Even though you may not understand how God works, you know God does. So go ahead, pull up a bench, take your seat at the piano, and play. Our first story is entitled The Voice from the Mop Bucket. The hallway is silent except for the wheels of the mop bucket and the shuffle of the old man's feet. Both sound tired. Both know these floors. How many nights has Hank cleaned them? Always careful to get the corners. Always careful to set up his yellow caution sign warning of wet floors. Always chuckling as he does. Be careful, everyone, he laughs to himself, knowing no one is near. Not at 3 a.m. Hank's health isn't what it used to be. Gout keeps him awake. Arthritis makes him limp. His glasses are so thick his eyeballs look twice their size. Shoulders stoop, but he does his work, slopping soapy water on linoleum, scrubbing the heel marks left by the well-dressed lawyers. He'll be finished an hour before quitting time. Always finishes early. Has for 20 years. When finished, he'll put away his bucket and take a seat outside the office of the senior partner and wait. Never leaves early. Could. No one would ever know. But he doesn't. He broke the rules once. Never again. Sometimes, if the door is open, he'll enter the office. Not for long, just to look. The suite is larger than his apartment. He'll run his finger over the desk. He'll stroke the soft leather couch. He'll stand at the window and watch the gray sky turn gold. And he'll remember he once had such an office. Back when Hank was Henry, back when the custodian was an executive, long ago, before the night shift, before the mop bucket, before the maintenance uniform, before the scandal. Hank doesn't think about it much now. No reason to. Got in trouble, got fired, and got out. That's it. Not many people know about it. Better that way. No need to tell them. It's a secret. Hank's story, by the way, is true. I changed the name and a detail or two. I gave him a different job and put him in a different century. But the story is factual. You've heard it. You know it. When I give you his real name, you'll remember. But more than a true story, it's a common story. It's a story of a derailed dream. It's a story of high hopes colliding with harsh realities. Happens to all dreamers. And since all have dreamed, it happens to us all. In Hank's case, it was a mistake he could never forget. A grave mistake. Hank killed someone. He came upon a thug beating up an innocent man. Hank lost control. He killed the mother. When word got out, Hank got out. Hank would rather hide than go to jail. So he ran. The executive became a fugitive. True story. Common story. Most stories aren't as extreme as Hank's. Few spend their lives running from the law. Many, however, live with regrets. I could have gone to college on a golf scholarship, a fellow told me just last week on the 4th tee box. Had an offer right out of school, but I joined the rock and roll band. Ended up never going. Now I'm stuck fixing garage doors. Now I'm stuck. Epitaph of a derailed dream. Pick up a high school yearbook and read the "What I Want to Do" sentence under each picture. You'll get dizzy breathing the thin air out of mountaintop visions. Ivy League school. Write books and live in Switzerland. Physician in a third world country. Teach inner city kids. Yet, take the yearbook to a 20th year reunion and read the next chapter. Some dreams have come true, but many haven't. Not that all should mind you. I hope the little guy who dreamed of being a sumo wrestler came to his senses, and I hope he didn't lose his passion in the process. Changing direction in life is not tragic. Losing passion in life is. Something happens to us along the way. Convictions to change the world downgrade the commitments to pay the bills. Rather than make a difference, we make a salary. Rather than look forward, we look back. Rather than look outward, we look inward. And we don't like what we see. Hank didn't. Hank saw a man who settled for the mediocre, trained in the finest instructions of the world, yet working the night shift in a minimum wage job so he wouldn't be seen in the day. But all that changed when he heard the voice from the mop bucket. Did I mention that this story is true? At first he thought the voice was a joke. Some of the fellows on the 3rd floor played these kind of tricks. "Henry, Henry," the voice called. Hank turned. No one called him Henry anymore. "Henry, Henry." He turned down the pail. It was glowing, bright red, hot red. He could feel the heat 10 feet away. He stepped closer and he looked in. Water wasn't boiling. "This is strange," Hank mumbled to himself as he took another step to get a closer look. The voice stopped him. "Don't come any closer. Take off your shoes. You are on holy tile." Suddenly Hank knew who was speaking. God. "I'm not making this up. I know you think I am. It sounds crazy, almost irreverent. God speaking from a hot mop bucket to a janitor named Hank. Would it be believable if I said God was speaking from a burning bush to a shepherd named Moses? Maybe that one's a little bit easier to handle because you've heard it before. But just because it's Moses in a bush rather than Hank in a bucket, it's no less spectacular. It sure shocked the sandals off of Moses. We wonder what amazed the old fellow more, that God spoke in a bush or that God spoke at all. Moses, like Hank, made a mistake. You remember his story? Adopted nobility, an Israelite reared in an Egyptian palace. His countrymen were slaves, but Moses was privileged. Ate at the royal table, educated in the finest schools. But his most influential teacher had no degree. She was his mother, a Jewish who was hired to be his nanny. Moses, you can almost hear her whisper to her young son, "God has put you here on purpose. Someday you will set your people free. Never forget, Moses, never forget." Moses didn't. The flame of justice grew hotter until it blazed. Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Just like Hank killed the mugger, Moses killed the Egyptian. The next day, Moses saw the Hebrew. You'd think the slave would say thanks. He didn't. Rather than express gratitude, he expressed anger. "Will you kill me too?" he asked. Moses knew he was in trouble. He fled Egypt and hid in the wilderness, called it a career shift. He went from the dining with the heads of state to counting heads of sheep. Hardly an upward move. And so it happened that a bright, promising Hebrew began herding sheep in the hills, from the ivy leaf to the cotton patch, from the Oval Office to a taxi cab, from swinging a golf club to digging a ditch. Moses thought the move was permanent. There's no indication he ever intended to go back to Egypt. In fact, there's every indication he wanted to stay with the sheep. Standing barefoot before the bush, he confessed, "I am not a great man. How can I go to the king and lead the Israelites out of Egypt?" I am glad Moses asked that question. It's a good one. Why Moses? Or more specifically, why 80-year-old Moses? The 40-year-old version was more appealing. The Moses we saw in Egypt was brash and confident. But the Moses we find 4 decades later is reluctant and weather-beaten. Had you or I looked at Moses back in Egypt, we would have said, this man is ready for battle, educated in the finest systems in the world, trained by the ablest soldiers, instant access to the inner circle of the Pharaoh. Moses spoke their language and knew their habits. He was the perfect man for the job. Moses at 40 we like, but Moses at 80? No way. Too old, too tired, smells like a shepherd, smells like a foreigner. What impact would he have on Pharaoh? He's the wrong man for the job. Moses would have agreed. Tried that once before, he would say, those people don't want to be helped. Just leave me here and tend to my sheep. They're easier to lead. Moses wouldn't have gone. You wouldn't have seen him. I wouldn't have seen him. But God did. How do you figure? Benched at 40 and suited up at 80. Why? What does he know now that he didn't know then? What did he learn in the desert that he didn't learn in Egypt? The ways of the desert, for one. 40-year-old Moses was a city boy. Octogenarian Moses knows the name of every snake and the location of every watering hole. If he's going to lead thousands of Hebrews into the wilderness, he better know the basics of desert life 101. Family dynamics, for another. If he's going to be traveling with families for 40 years, it might help to understand how they work. He marries a woman of faith, the daughter of a Midianite priest, and establishes his own family. More than the ways of the desert and the people, Moses needed to learn something about himself. Apparently he has learned it. God says Moses is ready. And to convince him, God speaks through a bush. Had to do something dramatic to get Moses' attention. School's out, God tells him. Now it's time to get to work. Poor Moses. He didn't even know he was enrolled, but he was. And guess what? So are you. The voice from the bush is the voice that whispers to you. It reminds you that God is not finished with you yet. Oh, you may think God is. You may think you've peaked. You may think God's got someone else to do the job. If so, think again. God began doing a good work in you, and I'm sure God will continue it until it's finished when Jesus Christ comes again. Did you see what God is doing? A good work in you. Did you see when God will be finished? When Jesus comes again? May I spell out the message? God ain't finished with you yet. God wants you to know that and to convince you. God may surprise you. God may speak through a bush or a mop bucket or a stranger. God may speak through this book. May we pray. Gracious and hopeful God, we are in a time of uncertainty. We are in a time that we need hope. And I pray that this series of readings will lead us to think and to give each of us inspiration, and hope. And I simply ask that you be with us each and every day, and that we know that your presence are near. In Jesus' name.